We heard a clip there from somebody on the protest saying nothing has been done, the government hasn't done anything about it. But would you accept that actually in Britain we have one of the best records in Europe of reducing carbon emissions?
Well, unfortunately, the government lies quite a lot with statistics about our record on reducing carbon emissions. They don't include all the emissions from all the goods that we import. So we are consuming loads of stuff from China and India and so forth, and actually all the emissions in those should really be included in our figures. And when you include those, actually Britain's record is pretty mediocre. What the government did do after our rebellion in April was they made some significant changes in terms of their rhetoric, which was good. So we had Parliament declaring a climate and environment emergency. We had the government saying we're going to achieve carbon zero by 2050. But what's actually been done, this is why we're back on the streets here, and what's actually been done, has there been any reduction of emissions in the air sector? Has there been any reduction in agriculture? Has there been any reduction anywhere? The answer is no, and that's why we have to be back here rebelling again.
But why for 2 weeks? I think that's where you are possibly going to lose a lot of the kind of public support that you did enjoy last year.
Well, but, people asked us the exact same question in April when we did it for 2 weeks then. And you know what doing it for 2 weeks does, Ian, is that it means that it really can't be ignored, that it becomes a topic of conversation across the country and across Britain. That's what happened in April. That's what we anticipate happening again, and it seems to be happening so far, that people are forced once again to confront this. Of course, we would rather not be out there for 2 weeks. No one wants to be out there in the rain day after day being arrested. The number of arrests, by the way, is now up way above what you said earlier. It's now up to about 245. We don't want to be doing this. We're doing this because there's no alternative, because, as I say, no action has been taken and the situation is absolutely dire. So we're going to hopefully lead Britain's conversation on this for the next couple of weeks.
Well, that's what we're trying to do now. Do you think, though, that the police tactics have changed? Have you noticed any change from last time?
Yeah, the police are being a bit more forceful, so 245 arrests already on day one, and they've removed a lot of infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, by the way, I mean things like bean bags and tarpaulins and things which are, one might have thought they could have allowed to stay, but no, they determined that these things had to be removed. Some of the removals we're going to question the legality of. Yeah, the police seem to be trying to up the ante a bit. We suspect they've been leaned on by some of the top politicians in the government. But we're just continuing our same old way, absolutely non-violently, absolutely resolutely out there trying to ensure that this issue cannot drop off the agenda again, because it's dire, and every passing month that passes, it just makes the situation worse, the situation in terms of biodiversity and climate. We've got to do something if we're actually at all serious about giving our children a future.
Let me just play you a brief clip from a call that Nigel Farage took earlier from a caller called Steve in Hackney.
I'm extremely angry. I'm extremely stressed. How can we survive without any income for 2 weeks? I want the government, the police to clear out the street. There are thousands and thousands of people like me that they depend on those roads. We need to do our job. We depend on those roads and bridges. We need to deliver the food. We have only 30 minutes to deliver the food. Food we cannot store and deliver like next time or 2 hours later or the next day. We depend on that. We cannot survive. Please find another way.
What's your reaction to that, Rupert?
Well, if that gentleman who I sympathise with can suggest another way that's going to work, we're all ears. Like I said, Ian,
but your protests are potentially putting him out of business.
Look, we don't want to be doing this, but what's the alternative? There's a very simple way to end this rebellion. If the government were to concede our demands, and everyone, I think, with any intelligence or understanding of the situation realises that these demands are actually very reasonable. They're what we need to make ourselves safe.
Some of them aren't, though, are they? I mean, you want to have...
our demands, we will go home tomorrow.
You want to have a citizens' assembly which would effectively take over the functions of government. I know John Bercow likes to do that, but I'm not sure Extinction Rebellion can be taking over our government.
Oh, no, it's not about Extinction Rebellion taking over, Ian. It's about the citizens taking over.
Well, that's what we have Parliament
for. We run the
for.
Citizens' Assembly. The point about the Citizens' Assembly is that I think it's pretty much obvious to everybody now, isn't it, that our so-called representative democracy is drastically
then get
failing
elected to
on every
change it.
front. So we need to have an alternative. And what we want to do is bring in citizens to enrich democracy, to help us all decide how to get from
Well, I'm
here
sorry,
to there.
that is what Parliament is for. And if you have such an objection to Parliament, then you need to try and get into Parliament. And if you aren't popular enough to get elected, well, that says something, doesn't it?
Well, what we're doing, obviously, among other things, is putting pressure on parliamentarians, and more of them gradually seem to be waking up. But I come back to my point, Ian, which I think that many listeners would concede, which is that Parliament is failing. Parliament can't even move forward on Brexit and is in constitutional crisis. It has not managed to show any decisive leadership at all on climate and nature. It did declare the climate emergency, which was great after our rebellion in April. But where's the action?
Okay.
That's what we can't keep coming back to. Where's the action? Where's the actual changes in our system? It's our system that is destroying us and is going to kill our children.
All right, Rupert, thank you very much. That's Rupert Read there, Extinction Rebellion spokesman.